So first, I would like to thank to the organizer of this event this evening, Amir Balaban. And for second time, this is my second time. This time around, I will share with you my quest to photograph the birds of the world. Under the umbrella of the photographic handbook of birds of the world, אפשר לסגור את האור בבקשה? Under the umbrella of the photographic handbook of birds of the world, I will begin with background, how this project came about, the goal of the project, how we plan the expeditions, how we're planning also future publications, and I will go down to the details, how about the photographic approaches, even down to the equipment, but I will leave to the end, the sweets. To the end, because they're sweets. And this will be what it takes to get the extremest birds on Earth, like the Cudinamarca anpita that you see on the left, and the Musafuera rayadito. But first, I would like to tell you that I'm about to release my work, my life work, the handbook of Western Palearctic with Lars Svensson, and I call it the Lars Svensson Inspiration. This book, from my point of view, is reflect how we learn to look at birds. What I'm talking about how we learn to look, it means how we advance in bird identification, understanding of variation in birds, taxonomy, and so on. It's all happened in the last 3 decades, and when I look back, there's been so many things that change in our understanding, and it's all started in these years, in the 80s, 90s, what we call the golden age of bird watching. And this, more or less, this is the time, the 1980s, when I met first time Lars Svensson, and he inspired me. And since then, we worked together. You can see his first visit to Israel in 1984. To Israel, he was already feeling at home with the Maccabi beer in his hand. And if we're talking about the 1980s, the golden age of bird watching, this is where everything started with me. I went down to Eilat, as you know, to found the International Birdwatching Center, try to study the massive bird migration. There is no second to it around the world. But soon I really found that massive number of inquiring minds that came to share with me these advances. There is no better picture to illustrate these days than this picture on the right. Kilel Malayani, Dan Zatterstrom, Anne Schakerman, the top birders and artists gathering around me, making the first ever illustration in Western Palearctic of a new Western Palearctic bird, the Zarit Ktana, the Alauda Gulgula, or Rinta Skylark. You can see my first rigging station was just a modest, small tent on the edge of the desert, and this is all how it started for me. But soon, very much so, as you know, as you can see, the first years of my ornithological career were related to Israel, Middle East, and working intensively in a lot in Israel. But probably because that I based myself on the Red Sea slowly, I moved into more the interest in marine environment and seabirds, and I would like to get water if it's possible. Thank you. Sorry. So I used to regard by some of my friends as the desert man. By now, marine explorer. When I'm talking about marine explorer, I'm talking about 12 seasons in the Southern Ocean, Antarctica, visiting virtually every subantarctic islands in the world, ending up with the publication of the Complete Guide for Antarctic Wildlife, already second edition, and working on all marine mammals of the world. There are under 30 species. I have one of the highest number of seeing and experience whales, dolphins, and seals of the world. 100 species above surf with 40 free dive. The principal idea of my work on birds is to experience the animals, the birds, myself before I'm allowed myself to put words to paper. But what have taken me for the rest of the world oceans is this project. A monograph on all tubules of the world, albatross, petrels, shearwaters, and storm petrels of the world, already 20 years in the making. This project, I just want to tell you, it's already changed 4 publishers. They give me the time. And I'm about to write it because by now, I'm the only person in the world that has seen all living taxa, species, subspecies, subpopulation, and photograph virtually everyone for this monograph. And I tell you all this because I want to tell you, to get you inside how it's all triggered, the birds, the idea to photograph all birds of the world, not only the seabirds. And the 6 birds that you see here, during this walk, especially in the Pacific, I discovered, rediscovered, and first documented at sea 6 gadfly petrels, including the famous Beck's petrel that thought to be extinct, and I refound it in the Bismarck north of Papua New Guinea. I don't know why the video is not working here. I go back. David? No. So there were some videos where I'm talking to explain how I walk in the ocean. So the work on the tube nose, slowly during these walks, it was take good number of years, 12 years almost, in the Pacific. For example, you see here the islands of Vanuatu. This is east of Australia, 1,000 kilometers of islands. And in this project, I'm already started to establish the work on petrels, not only in the ocean, but also on the islands, to try to find the colonies in order to understand differences in vocalization to trap the birds for biometrics, DNA, and etc. So this is example how we establish the work both at night on the islands and at sea. And Vanuatu was one good example of very remote place, 1,000 kilometers of islands, and we cover it all by now. But if I try to scale my work in the tropical Pacific, remember this geographic region, the tropical Pacific, you not see it in many literature. It's a very interesting place on Earth. It's actually the largest geographic or geographic region of the world. If I try to scale my work in the tropical Pacific to any other work before me, there's only one. It's the Whitney South Sea Expedition of the American Museum in the 1920s by Rollo Beck. Rollo Beck is this guy that found the petrol that I rediscovered 80 years after him. And when I'm talking about tropical Pacific, that you understand, it's Melanesia here, the end of Polynesia here, north to Hawaii. This huge triangular. We more or less, I know by heart, the diary of this 12 years expedition. As you can see, the pink line, it's what the Rollo Beck have done on the Whitney South Sea Expedition, and the yellow circles is my work. So we almost matching completely the tropical Pacific. And we score almost the same number of birds, almost sometimes using the same kind of boat. But if you want to know what is the tropical Pacific, we have to spread to flat the planet, and you can see this is the tropical Pacific by area compared to all other oceans. And as you know, the world is covered by 70% of ocean. We learn this in the school, obviously. But for this lecture, I tried to plot all my works in the ocean in related to the Tubenos monograph 20 years, the 7 years work from Arctic to Antarctic on marine mammals, and the work in relation to the Antarctica, the all southern oceans, it's also very big. But in the tropical Pacific, I plot all the islands that I've been, that this is the red line more or less, and all the islands that I've been, and all the crisscross that I've done with different operations. So this is the area, the red area, that I cover myself. And remember what I told you, I need here to get your mind to understand, because here is how the whole idea of to photograph all the birds of the world came about. I showed you how in Vanuatu we start to establish the work at sea and on islands to maximize understanding of the birds, the petrels. And if I mentioned already Whitney South Sea Expedition, Rollo Beck and his petrel, there's one petrel that he have tried to get, and very hard. It's the Fiji petrel. He didn't get, but I got. It's the only petrel that I found that he didn't find. But this was take 5 expeditions. Some of you have been in my lectures in Tel Aviv. I explain the whole work on the petrels and in Fiji. But while doing that, I also start to get all these islands around Fiji. There's many, many islands to document virtually all endemic birds, which are amazing. It's really colorful birds. There's no drab birds. There's all the endemic birds of Fiji are so colorful. But look what's happened to me here. What triggered everything. I go on these islands and I see these birds. And they're not fitting to the field guides, to the literature. And remember what I told you about the advances that I got here in Israel. How I learned to look birds. When you go on this island and you see how these birds describe and what it's known about them, you see how it's important to document them as well. And what more, 70% of these birds in the Pacific, tropical Pacific, you go to all these wonderful islands, exotic islands, and all these islands, they look very nice in pictures, but they're very silent. There's a silent, you not hear birds, because the birds are almost extinct. Most of the birds are threatened in the Pacific. They are on the verge of extinction, if not on the blink of extinction, if not extinct by now. You could go to, שלום דן, אתה מאחר, אז אני אנצל עכשיו לשתות מים. ואל תיתנו לי אחרי זה רעיון, איך אפשר לדבר בלי שהפה מתייבש. So, 70% of these birds in the tropical Pacific are highly threatened, critically endangered. I'll give you another example. You go to Lord Howe Island, east of Australia, on the north edge of the Tasman Sea. It's a beautiful 700-meter rock coming out of the ocean, as you see there. You put a charm on the water, and you have in half an hour the whole set of Southern Ocean albatross petrels, stone petrels. I promise you. But I came to study the Providence petrel on that island that is almost endemic to that island. But here I also studied it on the island itself. And when doing so, this small chicken-like bird was crossing my path, if not walking between my legs when I walk in the forest where this petrel is breeding. And this is a flightless rail. The endemic flightless woodhen of Lord Howe that almost got extinct, and now it's recovering very slowly. So you can see here how I start to pay attention to these endemic birds on the islands, not only the petrels that I come to study, and especially that I also start to understand that the same threats that affect the petrels, it's the same threat that the petrels and these endemic birds, land birds, share together. And it's mostly introduced of alien predators by human, by the first explorers, 200 years ago. And this is how virtually all population of island birds are under pressure, serious pressure and threat. So if I take all the island birds that I documented, the endemic birds, land birds, with the seabirds, I covered 82%. I photographed 82% of the avifauna of the whole tropical Pacific. As I told you, the largest area on Earth. Okay? And listen to that. If I take what I done, the same work in the tropical Pacific, Atlantic and Indian Ocean, now I finished all these oceans too, I covered for this project 70% of the avifaunas of the world's oceans. So now you see, if I done all the birds of the all 70% of much of the oceans, what left is the continents. Simple as that. So this is how it's all come about. About 10 years ago, this title initiated the Photographic Handbook of Birds of the World, with the idea that first things before we publish anything, before we start anything, is to establish scientific photographic collection. The idea that it will be like when you have museum collection with specimens, to have also scientific photographic collection, especially when nowadays photographs, digital photograph, used to a lot into research and understanding of birds. It's not going to replace, will never replace museum specimens or type specimen, but we're going to treat the photographs which are regarded as accepted for publication and for this collection as a type, photographic type. And when I'm talking about the starting of this, about this project, by now, after 10 years, I photographed myself 5,500 species in the world, more than half of the birds of the world. So it's not only planning, we're about in the middle, there's much to do, but it's already sitting very well. And the idea is that every bird that I photograph that we decided is fitting for this collection, it's have the quality, it's showing all the characters of that species, subspecies, with the information on the on habitat, anything else, just like when you have a specimen in a museum with a label, to this photo that represents this taxon, there will be all information that you need. And this become a type in this photographic collection. So we have already 5,500 species. It's a good start. And the idea is that this collection will be available for the public use, for research, education. But before anything, we're going to publish also a set of volumes that will treat the world by their geographic region. And I will come to that and explain to you why. The basic idea is that many things in evolution, in our understanding of taxonomy, and how we're thinking birds, it's by their geographic region. And more or less you can see here, this is the circles around the major geographic region or regions in the world. And, the idea is that also before we starting to publish for each geographic region update of the taxonomy, it will be a very short information of every bird that will be include the photos, this type's photo, map, and small description. But above, before we start to come with all the volumes, we will publish the manual, the introduction for this project, and explain evolution of the bird families of the world. And I will come to that soon. So as you can see, basically before we start, we break the world into target species. So obviously in the Antarctica, Southern Ocean, you can see the numbers in each geographic region. It's the one that I photographed as a new bird for this project. So in the Antarctica, I photographed only 29 birds. Of course, many of them are highly adaptive special birds like penguins, but it's 100% of the target birds. If we go a little bit north to the tropical Indian Ocean, excluding Madagascar, I photograph only 43 birds, but they're all really rare endemics on very remote islands that we have to go to all these islands to get. And by now, the 43 birds that I got for this collection is 90% of this area. And the tropical Pacific that I told you, where I got the 82% of the whole avifauna of this huge area, it's only under 37 birds, but they're very rare and will not stay with us for a long time, unfortunately. So, but the biggest chunk is, of course, it's in the neotropics. Central South America and the Caribbean islands. I've been almost on every possible country, island around this huge area, from Mexico down to Argentina, including all the islands in the Lesser Antilles, Greater Antilles, in the Caribbean. And I photographed there 3,275 species out of 4,000 birds of this massive avifauna. It's the largest collection, I think, any collection for this massive habitat. I'm not talking about one person, about any collection in the world. It's the largest, the most complete also in terms of subspecies and possible splits. And quickly, that you understand why we choose to work first in the tropics. Obviously, but you can see here on the map the break of the geographic region, Palearctic. Ethiopians also call Afrotropics, and Arctic and the Neotropics here, where we photograph already more than 3,000. But you can see here when you put the density, bird density map of the world, you can see most of the birds are in the tropics, and most of the rainforest, where it's most difficult to photograph birds, to operate, and where it's the most least known and documented birds occur, are in the tropics. So it was fitting very good the idea that I should start from the difficult ones, where it's need more work. And this is, we came all about, this is why I was stacking almost for 7 years doing the whole Central South America. Other things that we established doing the work on this project is once I getting 70%, remember the 70% rule, and I explain to you why. Once I getting 70% of the avifauna of one big region, I move to the other one. And as you can see, in Africa, I'm almost 70, but we do moving gradually. And now the whole Southeast Asia, Australia, Papua New Guinea is waiting for me. And it's going to be 4 years, and I got already the approval to do that, but we're waiting that I will release this handbook of Western Palearctic that I told you, that I do with Lars Svensson. Next year it will be out, and then I will go back to the field to do about 2,000 birds. The idea that once I will get also 2,000, the next 2,000, and by that time I photograph in the wild 7,500 species, we will open the collection, this type collection, to many other photographers, and so on. So this is the idea, and now I explain to you a little bit about the progress of the bird families of the world. There are about 250 bird families of the world. And all the time, the families are changing position. It's crazy what is going today with the taxonomy. Almost every half a year, there is a new list of bird families. But this is the most update now. We try to be update as much as possible. And as you can see, all the ones that I photograph, at least one representative of a family, but actually, where I photograph, at least one representative, it's shaded with green. So I photograph virtually all the bird families of the world for the first volume, but we shaded green only when I photographed most of the genera in this family. As you know, if you want to characterize a bird family, you have to understand and to describe the genera, because the genera are the one that making the bird family. So, and most important is the main branches within the family. So it's we're getting very close to have the full collection just to illustrate the bird family. And I give you an example. In Aniformes, there are 3 bird families. One of them, with the least number of species, is the screamer. It's related to geese and ducks, yes, but it's a huge bird. If you've been in South America, you must have seen at least one species, only 3 species, but these 3 species made of 2 genera. So we will show in the introduction for the bird family, the volume, only 2 species. And if we take the largest family in this Aniformes, 165 species of ducks, swans, and geese, they are made of about 40 genera. And about 30 of them are the main branches in the evolution of this family. So I already photographed these 30, or virtually all the family branches of the Anatidae. Okay, so we're basically almost ready with the material for the introduction to the bird families of the world before we go by geographic region and treat each region separately. But as to going down to the species level, obviously I will have to chalk a big ground here as well, because when we want to illustrate the geographic regions, I need to get a good number of birds and at least all this distinctive subspecies. You can see here, this, for example, the Mount Cameroon francolin is the only photo of that bird. It's never been photographed before. I choose these 13 birds just to give impression of the quality that we are aiming for. And but only the first 4 of them, I will use to explain how I work in the field. Okay? I guess you all waited for this. The rest was just boring. Okay. So let's start with the great Anpita. The great Anpita, I choose, can I get water, please? Thank you. The great Anpita, it's endemic of Venezuela. For me, it was one of the very, thank you, Amir. For me, it was one of the very last Anpitas of the world. There are about 55 Anpitas in Central South America. I photographed virtually every species possible, split subspecies. And this one, it's one of the least photographed and very, very difficult bird to see. And when I'm talking about unpitas. I'm not talking about the ones that you can go, there's a few species now, you can go in Peru and, or in Costa Rica, and there's a few species that are habituated for visitors and they get fed and you can see them. Most of the other unpitas, you need to sit many days in the forest on your belly to get. They're so shy. There's nothing worse than that. So we will use the great unpita to explain the pre-planning of expedition. Many of you are also traveling the world, and I'm not going to tell you anything new here. But the way we conduct the expedition, it's required a lot of pre-planning. The pages, the maps that you see on the left, they're actually the original site maps and how we divide the habitats. It's not working? I'm sorry, there was supposed to be here a video explaining how we work in these different 7 habitats in Venezuela while I'm talking, but I will try to cover it. There are 7 major habitats in Venezuela, and the idea that so here it's very important to understand you have to plan in order to maximize the effort. This was a almost 2 months expedition, and in order to get really this precise planning, we planned it. The planning was taken nearly 1 year before the expedition. All the major experts from each region in Venezuela have worked on this plan, so we can maximize the effort. Venezuela is a huge country. It has also 2,000 species. 2,000 species. By that time, I came to Venezuela with the request, my target list, because I work in many other places around, was only 500 birds to photograph. 500 birds. So you need the experts to work with you. So put long story short, because we cannot see also the video here, I haven't seen, the only bird that I haven't photographed is the one that I really wanted most, the great unpita. But I got 400 birds for this collection from that impressive country and very successful expedition. But I got some other birds. One of them, I hope the video will work now, not working. This is the white bellbird. I guess some of you, if you've been in Venezuela, around the Tapuy region, it's a huge catinga that's making incredible voices and display that I wanted to show you. This video is also in full, its full length is on the internet, so you can watch it. It's about the work on Venezuela, explain how we have tried to cover all the habitats and to give always, as much as possible, a second chance for a bird if we're not missing as one of the rules. But this is something that I want to share with you. This is the white bellbird. It's a quite big bird, and he's sitting on the top, the highest tree, usually dead tree in the middle of the rainforest, and you can hear this voice from miles away. He's actually usually sitting. There's a few males. They have huge territory. I mean, you can hear even a bird from 2 kilometers. It's a big bird. And they try to attract the female. And when the female is coming, he's getting quiet. And when she comes close to him, he gives her this bang, bang. It's like, you know, it's like you can see how she's completely getting, this was, it's incredible bird, and it have this water that coming above the bill, and it's displaying it like if it's a tide, you know, and going around. It's amazing bird. So I wanted to show you that bird, is one of the 400 birds that I got in Venezuela that I really wanted, and I also recorded it. But then you ask yourself how I got the photo of this great anbita that I missed. This was my prime bird. I had to go back. And this is something that you have to bear in mind, and me especially, that we do a second, if not even 6 visits to a country until I nail the big chunk of at least the endemics, the special birds for this collection. So there, about my photographic approaches, okay? Doing this work, I have 2 photographic approaches, and very simple. The first two rules when working in such terrain is no tripod, no height, never. Because I have to be all the time with nature. I have to listen, to look, because it could be that I photograph a bird now, and there's another one here, and usually I'm working with 2 or 3 experts that do the sound recording, playback, help me to spot the bird, even put me on the bird. So I could photograph this bird, immediately one come here and put me here, and I shoot here. There's so many birds sometimes, especially if you come to one country. And how I deal with no tripod, I can hold my 500 15 minutes, we measured, with no one rattle. It's not because I'm strong, it's more technique. So this is how we do one of the approaches. I call it a photographic patrol. We go on a trail and try to spot and photograph the birds. The trail could be 3 kilometers or 20 kilometers, and we could do it maybe 3 times day after another until we chop good number of birds. And the other one, as you can see on the left, what I call a free forest photography. It's when I leave the trails. And when I leave the trails, also all my team stay on the trails and I go along. And this it's the real game. And my idea also is that the principal idea that I have to fit myself with the habitat, with the behavior of the birds, to be agile, to move with the surrounding, understanding what this bird is doing, and wait, and to make least disturbance and least interference, and eventually, believe me, I'm getting much better results and faster by that way. But before you do this kind of work, you have to be equipped the very right way. And here, I will show you what I'm taking on myself. The picture, as you can see on the left there, it's how I dress and how my camera is actually hanging on me. I have stripes that holding the camera on the back. The camera is hanging. It's not tight. It's not tight, but it's secure that it's not fail and break. So I can do, when I walk, I can take the camera even as a 500 millimeter and shoot very quickly. But most important is to keep free hands, because when you go especially on this free forest photography, you have to hang many times on things, and you fail a lot. You have to hold yourself. And you see all this equipment, it's all tight on me in pockets and in different stripes, just like how we learn now in the Maslul in Tzanchanim, you know, how you have to, everything, but everything is, it's on me, what you see here, which is including satellite phone and marine and land GPS, that in case of emergency or I need to find a way or retreat, always with me, always. I have also survival kit made of the best instrument from the Israeli army, Swiss army, and mountain climbers. I can survive the the forest weeks with these kids. Also the knife that you see here, very careful, use the top of the knife. It can use almost like as a very small machete if I need to go through a forest. But all these things is on me. I also make my own mosquito and insects repelling that I can put if I'm walking for weeks in the forest. I always put on me, and it's not on my skin, it's not on the environment, it's not the one that you buy in a supermarket. And very important is the clothing. I choose certain clothing that can dry very quickly. I'm against rain jacket. Rain jacket keep you wait for longer time. It's difficult to walk. It's not fitting the way I holding the camera. The only rain jacket that I have, it's for my camera. And I use umbrella. So if there is a big rain, and there is a big rains in rainforest, I usually go below a tree, open my little umbrella, and wait. Not need to rush to get a shelter, and I can get dry in half an hour if the rain stops. Continue walking all day. This is the idea. And and you need this kind of clothing. Also, very good boots. And most important, it's protection from snakes. See here, up to here, I have protection outside and below the trousers. And from here to here, also up to here. And I'm not joking. I struck at least 5 times by venom snakes, including the Egyptian cobra in Mozambique and rattlesnake in Brazil. I'm here because they're not penetrated. Okay? But I also taking with me on the left side, you see, is a kit to instruct out the venom if I get the venom inside. So now we are in number 2. You remember we have 4 birds to go through. Number 2 is the Cundinamarca antpitta. The Cundinamarca antpitta, I choose that bird on the left, on the top left. I choose that bird because it symbolizes the risk. I want to give you understanding that there's also risk that you're not planning, you cannot plan. Even that we planning and I work with the best team, always I have a plan B, everything secure. This is why I'm here after 10 years. But there are some risks that you have to be ready for them. And this bird is the best to represent that. This bird, soon after it's described to science, quite recently here in the middle of the Andes, in Colombia, the first team that went to try to find it were subject for very long period of kidnap situation. They've been held for months in captivity. And I was the first to test the water, to come after, to see if I can record this completely unknown bird and to photograph. And these photos that you see there, the photo, it's the first one that I've taken in the wild of that bird after it's been described to science, and possibly still the only pictures in the wild of that bird. But this was during 2 months expedition across the whole Colombia. If there's one place that I think that it's even better than Israel, it's Colombia. This country, there's no second to it around the world, believe me. Every day I woke up in the morning, 2 months expedition from dawn to night, working the night as well, and I thought I'm in heaven. There's no place on earth better than Colombia. It's also of 2,000 species of fauna, incredible place. And I got this Cundinamarca antpitta. This was 2 months expedition. And I had the best team. I had even representatives from the government, the military units, and even one guy that have very good relation with the FARC, with the guerrillas. So everywhere we go, it's like if you penetrate, you go to a danger place, and you have to call and you get permission from the enemies to each other. Okay, these guys can go and walk. And we done systematically almost every bird that I target. I mean, the people from Colombia that been with me couldn't believe how we get every endemic, every bird we got on that expedition. But then, on the last week of this expedition, in El Palgan, southern Colombia, on the border with Ecuador, when I tell you, it's difficult for me to tell you about this place, because this place is the most preserved choco rainforest of the Pacific slope. The highest biodiversity, not only in South America, in the world. It's a 10,000 millimeter rainfall. It's almost, you can say, is a free rainforest in each other. There's nothing to match this rainforest. The least visit area in all this region, in Colombia. No one is going there. But when we go there, this is expedition by itself, or also by itself, the last week. And we established already the camping. Not only the last target birds waited for me, but 40 armed guerrilla waited for me there. Luckily, I had the satellite phone, the GPS, and the only one in the world that could understand where I am is the foreigners affair in Jerusalem here, just here. We had to call the form emergency room. They were already about to talk about sending people to rescue me. But Santo, the president of Colombia, decided to show solidarity with Israel. And he said, tell to the guy, I sent my army to take him. He and his team. Put long story short, it was a long siege that the reason I'm here and I didn't capture by these guys, actually I was not on their agenda. They were on the way apparently to attack the army or anything like that. But if they will capture me, I will not be here. And the only reason that gave me some time to escape the whole problem, there was a heavy, heavy rain in this forest that flowed a river between us. And I had to eventually, the people here in Israel told me, we cannot tell you what to do. Santo is in 12 hours, 12 hours he is on your spot. But we already started to bypass the danger situation, put the cables over the river and find a bypass and leave the army actually to deal with the bad guys. On the way back, there was a convoy of 600 soldiers that went to deal with these guys and to rescue us, but it was not needed because I realized I should in that point go away from a Rambo movie. It's going to be a Rambo movie here. I had the 7 Indians that was doing the camping and everything. We had machetes. We bypassed the whole danger area. But you have also to understand, to be ready, when you go to these countries, remote places, that at one point a pistol will put to your head. And you have to know how to deal with that peacefully in order that you can continue your mission. And I will take you quickly quickly a timeout to summarize my injury. There's one thing, please not laugh about it. It's something that actually I'm laughing about. That I don't know why I always break the ribs of my right side, always failing on the right side, and so on. You can read the summary. But I'm still here. So the only thing I can add about it, you have to get ready always to recover quickly, because if you not recover quickly, you're out of the field. And the longest, so I can mention here, the longest period back-to-back expedition with no even one-day break was 10 months in the field for me. The only days in that year, I think it was about 2010, the only break that I had, it's when the days that I was flying from one country to another. And there was teams working at the same time, preparing the expedition back to back. So you have to be fit and not listen to your body when it's hurting. So now we're getting to the third bird. And the third bird is the Pire mountain hummingbird. This bird is our representative of what it takes to get the extreme birds on land. And as I told you, the 70% rules, why I have to move on, because if I stay above the 70%, I going to the extreme birds, the extreme locations, and this is where I'm getting almost on every expedition some adventurous and dangerous. And it's very expensive too, because you could spend even a month after you photograph 3,275 species in the North Tropics. You could spend 1 month and maybe get 10 new birds. And it's too expensive and very difficult. So, Pire Mountain, it's part of the Darien region on the border between Panama and Colombia, the southern end of Central America. So what happened to me in the southern Colombia didn't stop me, I came from the north. And actually, the north, Darien region, in 2011, and around that time when I visited, was regarded as a war zone. As a war zone because the guerrillas have pushed from Colombia into the Panama, into the Darien region, and all the drug dealers have found a very good safe haven to move the drugs. So it's become a war zone. No researcher, even locals couldn't move freely in the whole area. But I got eventually the right contacts in Panama, and I was invited for a meeting. I didn't believe, but eventually after 4 years of trying to get permission, I got permit to go to that place. And the permission, they have told me we can give you to go on 2 conditions. One, we will have to escort you with our best unit. Secondly, you don't need to pay for it. Nothing. Because we want to show you what our main fight. And our main fight, the biggest fight, is the illegal logging of the forest. You won't believe it. And because since this place become like a war zone, there is a lot of illegal logging, really devastating. So you can see here, Colombia, and this is what used to be National Park, but is a war zone, and this is the Pire Mountain. So the first thing, it's 60 soldiers. And these 60 soldiers are the Jungle Commando of Panama. Highly trained people, had to be in their base before the start of the expedition, learn discussing everything with maps, and learn about these people. They are really, they are אנשי סיירות, מה שנקרא, the top of the people, like in Israel. And then the first 2 days we're going through the rivers, bypassing the northern, the danger area, and actually all the time changing the area where we're entering the forest to start the climbing the expedition itself, so nobody will wait for us in a non-track trail or anything like that. So we had to really to do it like a shushu, you know, as we say here in Israel. And once you start to climb just a little bit, you see that this is tens of kilometers for all direction rainforest. It's like, it's unbelievable place. I hope the park one day will be reopened because it's an amazing place. From every window, that you go, and in that point of time, we said goodbye to the 60 soldiers that escort us on the danger place on the river, and only the captain and its 2 best soldiers came with us, plus 12 Indians. Some of them were before rangers on this park and were knowing the forest. The idea that they will do the opening of the forest and made all the camping while we're moving by altitude for different habitats to get just 10 birds. But these were almost the last most important birds for me in all Central America to get. So you can see why I have to move after 70%, because you have to go then to the most extreme places. So I got everything here. This was an incredible 2 weeks expedition, and it was unbelievable. Amir included in our quite funny movie, A Birdwatcher with No Boundary, the full story about this expedition. And now the 4th bird, and this is the Masufuera rayadito. And this, it was one of my very last phenaris of this huge family of Central South America of the Neotropics. To get that bird, you have to go 800 kilometers from Chile into the heart of the Pacific. You have to cross the Humboldt Current. You have to pass Robinson Crusoe Islands. You have to go until you find this chocolate cake in the middle of the Pacific. This incredible island. And once you're there, you have to do another 800 meters, 4 times. And I had to practice snapping before. But as you can imagine, I didn't come only for that bird, to Masufuera. Remember this place. It's one of the most remote places in the whole Pacific, in the tropical Pacific, yes? We know now what is tropical Pacific. And No one living there. It's a World Heritage Site. Very dangerous to operate in this place. You have to go really with the right people on expedition boat designed for that. On the expedition boat, I had to have the captain of that boat and a captain from the Chilean Navy that have been before in that place. Okay? This is the only way to get permit to get close to this island. It's no zone for no one. So I didn't come only for that one. You see, this is one of the very few photos ever taken of the Masufuera Rayadito. Yeah? I came to study these two unknown petrels, of course. You know, the Juan Fernandez and Steniger petrels endemic to Masufuera. My idea was to study, this is my main interest in petrels, is to study strategy of return these seabirds when they're spending the daytime in the ocean, and in the nighttime they go to the colony. So the strategy of moving from sea level to the top of these summits where they breed on these islands. And also feeding behavior, because there's no information. And actually the Juan Fernandez petrel, it's amazing petrel, is one of the very few gadfly that specialize virtually on flying fish. It's amazing. So I form mass chumming. Chumming is when you put all these fish on the water. I brought with me 1 ton of chum, and I made some chumming slick of nearly 3 or 4 kilometers long. I mean, you couldn't see the birds by the end of the chum slick. And I had to patrol all the time the chum slick. And while doing that, I found that storm petrel. Unidentified type of storm petrel. Probably related to white-bellied storm petrel. I published already the description of it. But it's very unique in shape. Maybe it's breeding on that island. Unknown species. So I got 2 birds, 1 shot. And remember, the land, but first ocean and then land. And here I will thank you for coming today with the clip of from the work on Masufuera. Thank you.